Hello, you're very welcome along to the Matchbook Weekend Football Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hussey, joined as always by Mark O'Hare and Adrian Clarke. And we are basking in a quite decent game week one. Mark and Adrian both landed their best bets. And we don't like blowing the trumpets too much, but Adrian landed a 7.8 shot, Fulham to win at Goodison and under 2.5 goals. Beautifully calling Everton just simply can't score at Goodison Park. I think it was 16 and 19 from memory last season, Adrian. So, fantastic shout.
Oh no, I'm very happy. I was on a train when it was happening, and I was when the final score came in. I sort of punched the air with delight. They must have thought I was a little bit crazy, the people around me. But yeah, no, I was chuffed with that one. Let's see if we can go again.
Yeah, Mark wasn't a million miles away from the long shot either. So high hopes for this week. And yeah, Adrian, as I said, a couple of comments came in from listeners. Keep those comments coming over the weekend. We love hearing from you guys. And before we get going, do hit that like button on YouTube if you're watching there and subscribe for free to the channel. It's the perfect way to keep up, stay in touch when we go live as well. And of course, it's available as always in your podcast feeds. Shout out to all the listeners there. As always, we pick 4 marquee games from the Premier League. The guys cover any other bets. A couple of European shouts from Mark this week and some interesting long shots and best bets. So let's get into it. We will start with probably the game of the weekend, although there's a case for maybe the 8 o'clock fixture, but it's Tottenham at home to Manchester United. We take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchbook.com. You can back Tottenham 2.98, Manchester United favourites 2.48. The draw currently 3.75. Both teams to score, yes, is heavily favoured in that market at 1.59. The Asian handicap line sees Tottenham get a quarter of a goal head start here at around about 1.82. And the goal line here is 2.5. But that's a good bit shaded towards the over. So look, Adrian, you had a week. I think you put up 7 selections in total last week. 5 of them won. So no pressure on you opening the show here. Tottenham versus Manchester United.
Right, yeah. No, that was good then. Yeah, no, pleased with that. Difficult game to call, this one, I think. I want goals. I want to be on side with goals. I wanted both teams to score. Too short. I wanted over 2.5. It's too short. So I've tried to find another way in. I just think that Spurs are a work in progress. I think they did okay at Brentford, but high line, I thought, got exposed quite a few times by Brentford. And when I think about Manchester United with Rashford and Garnacho in particular, absolute lightning, aren't they? And I just feel that Manchester United can make hay in behind. We know that Tottenham will press under Postecoglou and they'll squeeze up, different to before, clearly, in terms of their approach. But Spurs can certainly score against Manchester United. Looking at how lucky, how jammy Manchester United were against Wolves. I mean, they carved out so many opportunities, didn't they, at Old Trafford? And that's got to be a concern for Erik ten Hag, hasn't it? So yeah, I think that both teams to score is a very live shout, as is overs. But for the purposes of here, it is too skinny. So I've looked at Manchester United. I think there will be a reaction. Look, if I play for Ten Hag and I put on a performance like that, I'd make sure I was a lot better next time. And because he's not one to mess around. And I think there will be a reaction from Manchester United. There's no way they can be that bad again. So I think they'll take it to Spurs and they will cause them problems. Now I've looked at Spurs from last season at home to the top 9 last season when they played quite defensively. They conceded at least 2 in 6 of 8 games at home to the top 9. So when the best teams come to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, they've had a habit of conceding multiple goals. Manchester United have scored a lot against Manchester United in recent meetings as well. 13 across the last 5 fixtures, home and away, against Tottenham Hotspur. They've been a team that they've not found it too difficult to break down. So I've looked at Manchester United in isolation here, and I want to back them to score 2 goals or more. So plus 1.5 goals. We can get a price of around 1.9 on that. And just looking at Spurs and the new look defence, you got new goalkeeper, new centre half, attacking style of play, high line. I just think that United can score a couple at least in this game. So that's the route I'm going down. Be interesting to see what this United performance is like, because Ten Hag will not tolerate a repeat. No chance of that.
No, very interesting play there, Adrian, on perhaps a Manchester United reaction. And Mark, it was your best bet, Manchester United, and under 4.5 goals. And it was Onana decision away of being bust. But you got to take them when they come, Mark. But your assessment at that game, because it's easy to say, oh, United were terrible, Wolves were very good. Is that your assessment overall, or were there any positives to take from Manchester United front?
Not many. You don't want to overreact to one game, especially the opening game of the season. And in fact, that's a really terrible policy to take when you're trying to bet really by overreacting to just one game. As I say, especially the opening game. But they were really, really unimpressive. A thing that struck me mostly about the game for United wasn't anything systematic or tactically. It was actually just the physical nature of United's performance. Wolves looked fitter and sharper and physically superior in almost every facet. And United at times looked really lackadaisical, inaccurate, sluggish. I'm not sure that can be fixed overnight. I think, they looked a couple of weeks off the pace there, and I might be totally wrong on that sense, and they might come out all guns blazing here and blow Spurs away. It's a distinct possibility, but I thought the result, as everyone did, was incredibly kind on them, especially that sort of non-awardal of the penalty. They got away with one, really, and Ten Hag admitted they were lacking in a number of key areas. They need an immediate reaction, an immediate improvement. Obviously, it's possible, but I don't know. I kind of go back to United's record on the road last season under Ten Hag, a similar squad, basically very similar 11. They took 1 point away from the top 9. They conceded multiple goals in 7 of those 8 winless away days, conceding 28 goals. So I'm not certain they're going to turn around or turn the corner straight away. Like Adrian, I really wanted to have goals in this game. There was an opportunity to back over 2.5 goals at 1.7 on Tuesday morning. That's gone. I doubt we'll get it back. Obviously 1.7 is right on the threshold for what we would deem a reasonable angle here. But from a Spurs perspective, I think, I opposed them on week 1 for various reasons, really. The line moved massively in my direction, but that was more so due to Harry Kane's departure. But I thought they were much better than I possibly anticipated, much further down the road than I thought they could be under Ange Ball. They were the most passive team in the Premier League last year under Antonio Conte, bottom of the league for high turnovers. But we could see from the first whistle, pressing is key for Postecoglou and Spurs this season. I thought Maddison had a good game in and out of possession. I think we saw the better side of Bissouma in the midfield engine room. The only negative I probably had was with Charlison's lack of influence. Spurs had 70% of the ball and 18 shots, and he didn't really have a major involvement. So I think they'll be fun. Absolutely high risk, high reward strategy with that high press and the high line. That is a concern with Rashford, Anthony, Sancho, etc. But I just think, they were far too easy to play against last season. That's always the concern, that they don't turn the corner immediately. But I saw enough signs against Brentford to suggest that they can give United a decent game. If United are off the pace again, then I think Spurs will play on the front foot, score a couple of goals themselves. But obviously overs would be the dream selection here. If we got above 1.7, it's probably not going to happen. So I thought Spurs plus quarter goal on the Asian handicap at 1.82 was fair enough, considering what we know about United from last season and how they started this time around as well. So obviously you need United to win this match for our bet not to make money. So that appealed to me, but it's certainly not my strongest play. Any sort of combination of goals would be, but that's not possible on Matchbook.
Okay, yeah. If you do want that goals line, perhaps look at Adrian's bet. Look, personally, I was very impressed with Maddison and Bissouma. So for the podcast bet here, I'm going to lean towards Mark in the plus a quarter goal. That's available on Matchbook. Manchester United Spurs, plus 0.0/0.5. Half your stake on draw no bet and half your stake on plus 0.5. Effectively double chance there. So that's the tentative selection for the podcast bet. But I'm really looking forward to Tottenham versus Manchester United Saturday 5:30, and the second game on Saturday is a game that should have been at 12:30 here, but due to Manchester City playing Seville tonight, which we are recording prior to this, so prior to that game taking place, so do bear that in mind when looking at the market here. So it's Manchester City versus Newcastle United, and Manchester City currently 1.67 at home, Newcastle 5.6. The draw is 4.4. Both teams to score yes is 1.8, no is available at 2.1. The Asian handicap line sees Newcastle get a 3/4 of a goal head start here at 2.1, and the goal line is 2.5, and that's heavily favored in the overs direction. So Mark, look, take it away from, I guess we maybe slept walk into Newcastle a little bit. If you look again at their summer transfer window, they seem to have just heavily invested in strength. I think Adrian touched on that a little bit in their squad depth. But look, some of the signings really stepped up. And of course, Isak, who was last season's signing, looks like he's just going to be a natural goal scorer throughout this season.
Yeah, they were definitely the standout team on week one. It was probably one of those things: how good were Newcastle and how bad were Villa? Possibly a combination of both, really. But we suggested they were too short at odds on, and believed it was the right opportunity to take them on. But they were fantastic, really. The game exploded into life with those 3 early goals. It was great entertainment, but I do think Tyrone Mings' injury definitely swung the pendulum even further in Newcastle's favour. But they didn't take the foot off the throat at all in that match. They're excellent. They were ruthless, and they completely exposed Villa's high line with no pressure on the ball. So basically, the basics of Emery ball weren't there, and Newcastle took advantage. And I think they can be real bullies at St James's Park this season, as they were last time out too. So obviously, optimism is going to be high in the camp going to the Etihad. They looked confident. They looked very capable defensively. We know they can be strong and resolute. The midfield looked to have a really nice balance about it, with Tonali making a great impression, Guimaraes, Joelinton, Gordon picking up where he left off from the under-21s. And as you say, you've got Wilson now in reserve for Isak, and Barnes coming off the bench as well. It's quite exciting from a Newcastle perspective. And if you go back to March, Newcastle went away to City. They lost the game 2-0. They're very competitive for the most part of that game. They conceded, I think, after about 15 minutes or so, but then came really back into the game with the better team, actually, before City scored a second. And that was in the midst of Newcastle's really poor run. They'd won once in 8 going into that match or around that game. So, they're going to be rested and refreshed, buoyant after week one. I think they can be a real nuisance for City, as you say, involved in Super Cup action on Wednesday. We've got no Gundogan, no Mahrez, obviously. De Bruyne now injured. You've that trip to Athens on Wednesday, this game taking place Saturday night. Stones was included in the Super Cup squad, despite Pep saying he wouldn't be ready for it. Ruben Dias is being kind of governed by concussion protocols. Not sure if he'll be back. Laporte seems to be leaving this week. Bernardo was missing in that midweek squad through illness as well. So I'm not sure what Man City side are going to be put out here. Obviously, it's going to be good enough to win the game, but you can start to see the market moving slightly against them. And, I kind of came into the week thinking Man City to win under the 4.5 goals would be a staple here, but I'm actually going to nominate Newcastle +1 on the Asian handicap, because I think it does offer value here. You need Man City to win this match by 2 goals or more for the bet to lose. It's something they've achieved quite regularly against the best opposition in the Premier League. It's something they're very accustomed to doing, especially at the Etihad. But I don't know, early season, disrupted preparation, a midfield that's missing a number of key cogs, a defence that's looking, makeshift potentially. They were 1.53 for this match in March. They're now 1.64. So I think that's a fair enough difference when you consider the players that are absent, the scheduling difference, Newcastle being in a much better headspace, and also with a full squad, a stronger squad that went to the Etihad last time and applied themselves so well. So yeah, I think Newcastle +1 should give us a decent run here. I think they can be competitive.
Okay, yeah, particularly for a game like this, the Asian handicap line is a great way of getting involved for an interest bet here. And Adrian, I'll throw maybe this comment to you. How are Newcastle probably shorter to beat City than Madrid were in the Champions League semi-final? But I guess that just shows how brilliant they've started the season with that opening day. But it's not too much of a difference from where they were at the Etihad last season, as Mark alluded to. City 1.53 in the same fixture in March.
Yeah, that is a real surprise, what we saw on the screen there. But I've watched that game, sort of had to do a bit of analysis on it, in particular the analysis of Tonali in the midfield, and I couldn't have been more impressed. I just think that unit just functions so well on the day. They're all-round midfielders, so they're all supremely fit. They're very athletic. They can all defend. They can all sit and play make from deep. Or they can all play box to box. They can all play probably as an attacking midfielder as well. I think that unit has real potential, and they played brilliantly against Villa. Now, you can't get too carried away, but they'll take confidence from it. And I do think stylistically, they're the sort of team that can cause Manchester City problems. I do, because they're solid down the spine, as I've just explained. They're very good without the ball. They press well. And their game is all about turnovers. And on those turnovers, when they release a Gordon or an Isak or an Almiron, they have threats. And yeah, with this sort of patched up Manchester City rearguard, they might get opportunities in the game. And I can see them being extremely competitive. Last season, they were competitive. Mark's touched on the game at the Etihad. If you look at their games away at the top 6, those that finished in the top 6 last season, 3 goalless draws in there. for Newcastle United. So they know how to go to places and keep things tight. They only conceded 4 goals in those games, those 5 games away to the top 6. So it's something they're more than capable of making life hard for Manchester City. So yeah, it leapt off the page for me, even though City almost always beat this handicap at home. We know that they do. Just feels that it might be the right time to catch them. Post midweek game, a bit of travelling involved, the De Bruyne injury. Yeah, a little bit of uncertainty over what the best team is. I think it just feels like City aren't in prime condition right now, whereas Newcastle look buoyant. So yeah, I think it gives us enough. It gives us enough to feel that +1 on the handicap at this price is going to give us a run for our money.
Absolutely, yes. So the rare, well, not rare agreement, but rare agreement so far on the podcast. The guys are both taking on Manchester City on the Asian handicap line, plus 1.0 in Newcastle's favour. And we will lock that in as a podcast selection. So that's Saturday's football taken care of. We will move on to Sunday, and we see West Ham versus Chelsea. Sunday, 4:30 game. Take a look at the betting that we currently have at matchwood.com. Bit of movement in the market there, live on your screen, which is always good to see. West Ham 4.1, Chelsea even money here, 2.0 on the 90-minute market. The draw is 3.75. Both teams to score, yes, is favoured in that market at around 1.84. The Asian handicap line sees West Ham get a half a goal head start at 1.96, and the total for this is 2.5. So, Adrian, back to you on this one. Look, Chelsea's transfer moves, even in the last week, has been incredible. People arguing, are they breaking financial fair play? There's been some brilliant explainers of what they're trying to do with the 8-year contracts from various, including TalkSport, your own TalkSport, and Simon Jordan. So on Chelsea's transfers moves, just on the pitch, those couple of midfielders they've signed are nearly as good as there is in the Premier League already.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, they're going to be stronger, aren't they? Caicedo is a wonderful player with potential to get even better. Is he worth that money right now? Maybe not, but it doesn't matter. He's going to improve that team, and if they can afford it, if they're not breaking the rules, then good luck to them. Lavia is a very, very good player as well. So yeah, when you put those two in, and you've got Conor Gallagher's there, he's going to find it hard to get a game now, isn't he? But you've got Enzo Fernandez, who was the British record transfer. Fernandez, Caicedo, that's strong. That is very, very strong. I'm sure that Caicedo will go straight into the team. I don't see them waiting. Might as well just stick him straight in there. Of course, West Ham have got a couple of good signings themselves, a couple of midfielders in Alvarez and Ward-Prowse. So it'd be interesting, won't it? And that's what makes this quite a hard game to call, because you've got kind of two new teams. West Ham adapting without Declan Rice. How's that going to work? Paquetá is having his head turned, I think, by Manchester City. That could be a problem for them. And you got very, very new Chelsea, who were probably better than I thought, actually, against Liverpool. It was a bit chaotic, and it wasn't entirely convincing in the first half, but they grew into it. And when all's said and done, even though you thought they looked a bit open at times, Liverpool only had one shot on target. So I think there's a lot that Chelsea fans can feel positive about. Jackson got into some good positions to score. So yeah, looking at this game, I just feel that there's going to be a buzz about Chelsea ahead of this game. I do think they've got enough quality to undo West Ham, who are bound to be pretty pragmatic, as David Moyes almost always is at home to the big teams. And it's not a policy that really works for them. I mean, they took Manchester United scalp at London Stadium last year, but that was it. That was the only big win against a top side that they produced in front of their own fans. So it's not something they've done a lot of in recent times. I can see Chelsea grinding out a win here. I can. I'm going to go with Chelsea and under 4.5, which feels quite a nice price at 2.34. West Ham still look short. I know they've brought in a couple of bodies, but you looked at the bench last weekend. Still Antonio up front. Still look. Yeah, there's one or two. There's not a lot to change things. If things aren't working for them from the outset, not a lot on the bench at the moment for them to be able to change the course of a game. So, yeah, for me, I can see Chelsea getting in front and just holding it. That's how I see the game going. Chelsea in under 4.5.
Okay, yeah, so Chelsea to win 2.0 currently, or you can boost that up to Adrian's selection, 2.34 on Matchbook, Chelsea and under 4.5 goals. Mark, where are you looking for this one? I posed the sort of same question to you on that Chelsea midfield. It's going to be great throughout the season going forward, but maybe this weekend it'll be very new and there may be opportunities for West Ham to score at the other end.
Yeah, I think so. I'm still not ready to trust Chelsea as Adrian is. They were widely praised last week for the performance against Liverpool, and rightfully so. But I think if Salah's goal is onside, it could quite easily have got out of hand and got quite ugly for Chelsea, because there was a noticeable class apart between the two teams in the opening half hour. And Adrian's completely right. They grew into the game from then on, basically. And Pochettino is a top coach. We saw him tinker with the team and the tactics throughout that match on Sunday. We saw Ben Chilwell be extremely aggressive down the left-hand side. Fernandes showed what he's capable of after that big money move. He was kind of being derided last season. Well, he's actually a quality player. He showed it. Conor Gallagher played very well too. So, chuck in Caicedo and suddenly they will start to look more like a team. But I think we'll see the best of Chelsea probably in the autumn, really. So at the minute, I'm still sort of happy to kind of not necessarily oppose them, but certainly sort of keep them, just keep them to the side and look elsewhere for a best bet, really. So I came up with both teams to score in this game. It's 1.84 now. I put it in at 179, which is a nice little kind of increase, really. West Ham fans were very frustrated last weekend at Bournemouth. They could and should have really won that game. Sort of old failings coming to fault again, really. The away record has been pretty wretched for quite a long time in the Premier League, and a big reason for that is Moyes' pragmatism and his defensive approach and his in-game management, really. And he was criticised last week because after scoring, West Ham allowed Bournemouth back into the game before sort of showing a late flurry after the equaliser. And they invited all that pressure on. Bournemouth only had 4 shots between the first and 51st minute when West Ham scored, and then Bournemouth had 9 shots between the 52nd and 82nd minute when they equalised. And that's been a very familiar theme for West Ham under Moyes. But this will be, I think, a different sort of approach from West Ham. You would imagine a home game against Chelsea should stir the senses a little bit, the big rivalry between the two clubs. And I think when I looked at the 11 last week and potentially the squad, there still is plenty of quality in that West Ham team. There's still no standout reliable goal scorer, but there are inventive players, influential players, set-piece threats as well. So perhaps a little bit soft in the middle now after Declan Rice leaving. So I think that all lends itself to being a quite decent game, really. So as I say, I think Chelsea will improve week on week. But if you do go back to last year's disastrous campaign, they only kept 4 clean sheets on the road all season. Defensively, I'm not yet willing to trust them. I think West Ham's inferiority complex against bigger clubs would be a concern there. Just 2 home wins against the top 12 last season. But both of last year's meetings saw both teams score. 3 of the last 4 between the two teams at the London Stadium, I think, have seen both teams score as well. So I'm happy to have a crack at another, really, because the price is nice, 184. You don't often get those kind of prices between two teams with more than enough sort of ability in the final third to get on the score sheet in the Premier League. So happy to have a go, have a bit of a nibble at that price.
Okay, yes. Adrian's selection, Chelsea and under 4.5 goals is 2.34. Both teams have scored a safer option at 1.84. Both of these bets could come in. Again, I'm going to lean with Mark and podcast bets. Both teams to score 184, but I do have my eye on Adrian's selection in the Arsenal game. So that's both teams to score 1.84 currently, and a couple of comments supporting your Chelsea and under 4.5 goal bet. Adrian, you'll be glad to see. So it's maybe not from the host himself, but there are a few YouTube commenters that are flying the Adrian Clarke flag, of course, after week 1. So
don't get swayed though, Daniel. Don't get swayed. Be your own man.
Lingers here as always. I have my own bets here to look after as well as Matchbook. So we will go to Monday Night Football, Crystal Palace versus Arsenal. Monday Night Football, which will be 6:30 every evening, so it gives us an extra half an hour build up on what is probably the best show on telly there. Palace 6.6, Arsenal 1.63. The draw is available on 4.2. Both teams to score. Yes, it's currently available at 1.87. No is favoured a little bit in that market. We'll look at the Asian handicap line, which sees Palace gets a 1-goal head start at 1.88, and the goal line is 2.5, and that's shaded a little bit to the under. So, Mark, back to you on this one, and maybe specifically on Arsenal and that opening game against Nottingham Forest, which at times was looking very comfortable and very routine. Got a bit edgy in that last 10-15 minutes, probably a little bit of sloppiness from a counter-attack from Arsenal. So overall, where is your position on Arsenal from where it was game week 1? Has it changed much after that opening game?
Not from the match itself, but perhaps from injuries and transfer speculation. So, I haven't changed my rating on Arsenal yet, but there is a concern. There is a question mark around where Arsenal are going to be at the end of August. They did enough to beat Forest without sort of blowing the house down. Good to see Eddie Nketiah scoring after demanding to be involved, according to Arteta. Declan Rice looked at home in the central midfield. Saka and Martinelli sparkled. But to lose Timber to what looked like a serious knee injury is a worry, as is Gabriel and the speculation surrounding his future. So that's one to watch, really, in terms of Arsenal defensively. We saw, or we assumed and sort of speculated last year about Arsenal's defence perhaps being the issue really in their sort of title challenge, sort of filtering out towards the end of the campaign, particularly Saliba's absence. But one to watch really. I think Forest left it a little bit too late to really test them. I know Brennan Johnson missed that sitter really in the first half, but that came out of nothing really. So, I suspect Arsenal will need to glove up a bit more really for this trip to Selhurst Park. I think Palace will be a bit more aggressive, a bit more front foot, and probably play with a bit more belief and gusto compared to Forest when they go away. And, Palace probably had one of the easier assignments on the opening day, going to Sheffield United. Very impressive, though. Dominated possession, which is unlike Roy Hodgson and Palace, 68% of the ball. They've got a very strong core and centre of the midfield now as well with Lerma and Doucouré, and that's kind of given Eze a bit more licence as well from attacking midfield, and he certainly took advantage. 8 shots, 7 chances created. That was the most created by a Palace player since 2016. So I guess the issue with Palace always is the end product, just 1 goal from 24 shots and 8 efforts on target. So your concern with Palace is always that. Do they have the ability to score from the opportunities that they do create? And I guess flip it round, Arsenal shouldn't have this kind of fear factor that some teams do have going to Selhurst on a Monday night. They've won 2 of the last 3 visits there. They were the best travellers in the Premier League last season. An excellent record, 12 wins, 3 draws, 2 defeats at teams outside of the top 3, conceding just 11 goals in that 16-game sample. They actually only conceded 5 goals when visiting teams in 8th and below, which is a 13-game sample. 9 clean sheets, really exceptional stuff there. And 9 wins also in that 13-game sample, all of which came under 3.5 goals. So I follow a similar approach here because I think Arsenal do have that extra oomph in the final third, which is needed to sort of unlock a tight match, which this could be if Palace do sit in with those 2, destroyers in the centre of the park. So I've chosen Arsenal and under 4.5 goals here at 187. Palace scored 1 goal at home against the top 5 last season. Only once managed 2 goals or more when hosting a top 10 finisher. So I think it will be quite competitive, but I just give Arsenal the edge for obvious reasons, really. So, Arsenal and under 4.5 goals.
Cool. Currently available at 1.87, the selection of Mark O'Hare. And Adrian, a little bit on Arsenal and maybe even that team selection. And condolences to every Gabriel fantasy Premier League owner, including myself, when the team sheets came in 11:30. We're shocked to find Gabriel not starting a Premier League game for Arsenal. Given the Timbers injury, I'm probably expecting him to come back in here on Monday Night Football, but your takeaway from that selection heading into this game?
Yeah, I didn't see that one coming at all. I had him in my fantasy team as well. So I didn't have any heads up. I'd assumed he was injured, but it was obviously a tactical decision. But with Timber being out, he'll have to come back in. He becomes integral again to the team. I liked the tactical change in a way. I really liked Thomas Partey's role in the game. He was nominally at right back, but pretty much played at central midfield, and Arsenal reverted to a back 3 in possession, and it worked very, very well. But I think it worked very well because Forest was so defensive. The wingers, Saka and Martinelli, pinned their wing backs back, so there was no one really for Partey to mark. I don't think it's a system we'll play every week because other teams, especially teams that will spring attacks down the wings, it's just too risky, I think, to play that way. But it's good to see Mikel Arteta try something new. Didn't create a lot in terms of quality chances. I know the XG was really low compared to the rest of the division, but it was a game that Arsenal dominated. It was largely impressive. But yeah, caught again on a counter attack. That's something they've got to work on. They'll control this game. Palace will let Arsenal have it, and it's down to Arsenal to produce sharper passing, better movement, and to create better chances. But yeah, as Mark's outlined, the record away to teams outside the top 8 is tremendous, or it was tremendous last season. So many clean sheets. I mean, in total, 10 of Arsenal's 19 away games ended with a win to 0. And that included the game at Selhurst Park, which I think was the opening night for Arsenal last season. Really comprehensive win. I would see something similar this time. Got to be careful of Eze, who's in good form. Ayew as well, as a player that's hurt Arsenal in the past. He set up a lovely goal, I thought, at Sheffield United. But yeah, it's a big step up for Palace, who might have dominated against the Blades, but I don't think that's going to happen here. So yeah, I'm confident Arsenal can win the game. It will be tight. Don't think it'll be a thrashing by any sense, but yeah, Arsenal to win and to keep a rare clean sheet. They haven't had one apart from one friendly against the All-Stars of the MLS. Apart from that, they've had no clean sheet since they came back this summer. They're due one. And I just think, even though Mark's bet is a very, very good one, it's very safe ploy. I just think there's quite a jump, isn't there, to 2.66 for Arsenal to win 2-0. So for that reason, I'm going to plump for this selection instead of Mark's.
And it's for that reason I'm going to plump for it too. I think it's a massive jump to 2.66. Arsenal on the road to Crystal Palace. Both teams to score no. Included in the Arsenal win is 2.66. So full recap of all those selections, insights.matchbook.com. Do check that out. That'll be available around Wednesday afternoon onwards. So over the weekend, ahead of these Premier League games, do check out insights.matchbook.com. Full recap of all the bets put up here. We'll go to our EFL selection here. Adrian, 1 out of 1 to start. Your EFL picks really solid. You played it safe, one selection, got it over the line, and just about in Bolton in 3-0, I think it was in the end. So really impressive for League Two. My shout for them to win that division. Over to you for a couple of sections. You're taking on Cheltenham again in your first pick.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe I'm just clouded because I saw them in the flesh and I just wasn't at all impressed.
Yeah.
I just
remind us, wasn't it? It was about 10 days ago you saw them.
Yes, no, it was last week. It was pretty this time last week or on Tuesday last week. They got beaten up by Birmingham in the Carabao Cup. It was so comprehensive. It was scary. And Bolton were 3-0 up by half time at the weekend. So that one was always going to come in. Yeah, this time around, they're away at Portsmouth. And I'm thinking, well, I can only see one winner there. How can I get a price that appeals? And it's Portsmouth and both teams to score no. So it's Portsmouth to win 2-0. It's another one of these picks. It ramps up the price to 2.25. So that's good for me. Cheltenham haven't scored yet. Some people might say, well, they're due one. That might be the case, but they're yet to score, and they've looked really weak up top. Not many options off the bench. They've even brought on a 16-year-old in a couple of the games already. They're that light in the strikers department, and they're up against a Portsmouth team that have had 2 clean sheets on the bounce. They did concede one on the opening day against Bristol Rovers, but Bristol Rovers are flying since that game. So Pompey are really, really solid this season, and they look good. Colby Bishop, a player I really like at League One level, he scored in the last couple of games as well. They've got the second highest XG in League One, Pompey. So maybe they haven't got the goals so far this season that their performances warrant, even though they did wallop Leyton Orient. Yeah, they've been doing very, very well. Struggled a little bit past Exeter in midweek. And it might not be easy against Cheltenham, who will just go there to defend. But I'd back Portsmouth to have too much quality for Cheltenham, who I just don't see them hurting. John Mousinho's side at Fratton Park, and the price looks good. So 2.25 for me.
Okay, we're taking on Cheltenham again. Portsmouth, both teams to score now, or effectively put Portsmouth to win 2-0. 2.25 currently on Matchbook. Second selection is Crewe versus Walsall. Crewe had a big win, plenty of goals against Newport County last night, and you're expecting more of the same as they're at home to Walsall.
Yeah, look, we're getting into the territory where patterns are starting to develop. Okay, there's only been 3 league games in League Two, so it's not not a huge sample size to go off. But what I can say, based on what we've seen of Crewe and Walsall, is that they can't really defend. They show no real quality in terms of their off the ball work. Crewe have let in 6 goals in 3 games. They've let in 2 in every single game they've played so far, but they have scored 8. Crewe, they've been pretty good going forward, which is why they're in and around the playoff picture at the moment. 4 of those 8 have come from set pieces, so they're really in the groove. Mickey Demetriou, who's their centre half, is the top scorer with 3 goals already, so he's an obvious threat for Walsall in the game. As for the Saddlers, they've scored 5 goals. They've scored in every single game so far, so that's functioning pretty well. They've got a guy called Danny Johnson up front who's pretty prolific at that level. And they've also been a little bit porous at the back, conceding 7, 4 against Wrexham, and and 2-1 in the other game. So yeah, you put it all together, and I see two teams that are functioning very well going forward, and they just haven't got it at all right in terms of the way they're keeping things tight. I was close to putting this as best bet, really, at 2.05. Just think over. I was surprised to see this not odds on, given the form of both teams to date. So yeah, Crewe versus Walsall over 2.5 for me.
Okay, maybe the goal line's moving slowly to catch up to what's already happened this season. Adrian Clarke, 2.05 value play over 2.5 goals, Crewe versus Walsall. Before we move on to your European bets, Mark, we got a comment in earlier saying you look still shell-shocked from QPR's victory over the weekend, which it was the one thing that jumped off the page for me looking at my flash score.
How did that happen?
Yeah. How did that happen, Mark? And is it short or long as time as you want?
Ainsworth changed it up really and started playing a bit more to our strengths. It was probably one of the most complete performances we've had under his tutorship, really. Brought in a few hungry players. Obviously, Steve Cook made his debut at centre half as well, so a bit more experience, a bit more know-how. And yeah, just dug it out really. I've had to ride our luck a little bit in the second half, in particular. Cardiff hit the woodwork a couple of times, but no, Rangers, absolutely required a decent result. I would have taken a point, to be fair, before the game. So yeah, over the moon really with that, and fingers crossed we can start looking up, because we have made a couple of, I would say, smart additions to a squad that was lacking a bit of experience and leadership. So Colback and Cook will certainly help in that regard. So there's still issues behind the scenes. Chris Willock has been linked with moves away every other day, really. So the sooner he's gone, the better, really, because it might allow us to sort of invest in the squad. He's a terrific player when he's fit and available, but so often now in the last 18 months, he's not been available for us, or his head's not been quite in the game. So, still got a couple of weeks. So fingers crossed we get those deals done early doors and we can actually start looking up. But I wouldn't say we're out of the woods by any stretch. We've got a home game against Ipswich this weekend. A lot of people were sort of scoffing at sort of the talking up of Ipswich coming into the campaign, but I think they've already made a very decent early statement to suggest that they are worthy favourites around even money at Loftus Road.
That is our weekly Mark O'Hare QPR roundup. Thank you to Owen McIntosh for his comment on YouTube. And we'll go to Germany first, Mark. There's going to be a lot of people watching Harry Kane's debut for Bayern Munich away to Werder Bremen on Friday night. So it's going to be a big week for the weekend for Bundesliga as it gets underway. But you're looking at the team that beat Bayern 3-0 in the Super Cup away to Leverkusen this weekend.
Yeah, Leverkusen versus Leipzig on Saturday, a terrific sort of week one match from the Bundesliga. As you say, Leipzig 3-0 winners against Bayern at the Allianz on week one, a very impressive effort, especially when you consider the turnover that squad has seen in the summer. Gvardiol and Kunku, Szoboszlai, Lima, Alstenberg, etc. They've all left. But what you can do with Leipzig is trust them to do good in the transfer markets. And although Sesko didn't start, he's a really exciting addition. You've got Baumgartner, Sievold, Openda as well, just some of the new signings there. They're a good team. They still might take a bit of time to get going and gel together, but you can be sort of rely on them to play front foot, exciting attacking football under Marco Rosa as well. So they'll fancy their chances, because Leverkusen haven't had quite so much change, but obviously Diaby's gone to Villa. But the areas that require strengthening in the summer have been addressed from a Leverkusen perspective. I think Victor Boniface is a really exciting addition up front from Union Saint-Gilloise. He's looked very good in pre-season. Fullback's been strengthened. Shaq has arrived as well. Jonas Hoffmann, a really smart pickup from Gladbach too. They've still got Florian Wirtz, of course. So they'll be targeting top four this season without a doubt. And we saw a massive uplift under Xabi Alonso last season. He immediately improved morale, tightened them up a little bit, played to their strengths, allowed them to sort of overcome the loss of Patrick Schick to injury. And, the majority of their matches were very fun to follow under Alonso. So, I'm adamant if this game was played in November, over 2.5 goals would be trading a lot shorter than the 1.8 we're available to get this weekend. So it's too big a price to turn down for a Bundesliga match involving two of the more front foot entertaining teams in the division. Bayer scored twice or more in 12 of 17 at home last season. That included 7 times in 8 appearances against top half teams. Overall, 71% of their home games went over 2.5 goals. Leipzig scored in 12 of 17 away. They scored in 6 of 8 trips to the top half. There's 6 of those 8 6 of 8 games against the top 5 saw both teams scoring. They only kept 4 clean sheets away, and 68% of their overall matches in the Bundesliga saw over 2.5 goals. So, 1.8, more than happy to take that price. As I say, it wouldn't be there if we talked about this game in sort of November, December time.
Okay, maybe take a little bit of opening day value that Mark thinks the Bundesliga might be underrated for goals, particularly in Leverkusen versus Leipzig. And the second selection, we have had one sample size, Mark, and I think I counted 11 goals in these two sides, 2 opening games. So, look, is it just going to be a case of Ligue 1 goals being underrated again by the market, or how are you looking into the league overall and then this game specifically this weekend?
Yeah, I think French football still has that stigma of being quite sort of dour and sort of low scoring, and that's not been the case for quite some time because it's been led by a new breed of head coach. Obviously, the sort of Pep Guardiola influence has kind of gone across the continent, especially to France now. And I think in Lens and Rennes, you've got 2 head coaches in charge of 2 attack-minded teams who like to play good football. So again, over 2.5 goals here at 1.8. Starting with Lens, they lost last week 3-2 at Brest. They were 2-0 up in that game in complete control, conceded a penalty on half time, and then just faltered basically in the second half, put under real pressure, had a red card, conceded another penalty late on, lost the game. It was really a game of 2 halves, really. They controlled and dominated that first 45 minutes, but just looked incredibly shaky and worrisome defensively in the second half. And they're outshot 15-8 by Brest, which isn't ideal, really. They lost key players in the summer, Fofana and Openda in particular, but they're back at home now where they tend to be very, very strong. As I say, the head coach, Frank Hayes, is a very much an attack-minded head coach. Expect to try and right those wrongs and make a bit of a statement because they tend to be strong in Lens, and Rennes tend to be poor on their travels. But they started with a bit of an easy one at home to newly promoted Metz. 29 shots, 23 inside the box, 14 on target, an XG of 4.28, won that game 5-1. Callum Wendo, Guiri, Doku all scored. Really exciting trio going forward for them. So there's real hope that they can break the top 3 this season. They just aren't the type to kind of go here and shut up shop really and play for a point. They will want to try and fight fire with fire. If you look at their away record last season, 74% of their matches went BTTS. So I think getting over 2.5 goals at 1.8 here looks a real treat for a match that should be front foot, entertaining, exciting. Rennes kept 4 away clean sheets all season. Last year, 8 of their 9 trips to the top half saw both teams scoring, and 6 of Lens' 9 at home to the top half went overs. They kept just 2 clean sheets in that sample, 6 winners for BTTS backers as well. So it should be good fun.
Okay, yeah, another confidence shout at over 2.5 goals, the same price, 1.8. If you do want to double them up, that is available on the Match with Bet and Exchange. And do check out the odds checker grid, particularly as we get closer to kickoffs for those games. We'll invariably be the best price on that grid throughout, not just the exchanges, but the sports books as well. The best long shots, Adrian, there's no better place to start here. Fulham on under 2.5 goals, 7.8. You have a similar price selection this week, so make the case.
Yeah, look, it's a long shot, and that's the name of the section. But I think Plymouth are still a little bit underrated in the market. It's Plymouth against Southampton. It's the early kickoff on Saturday. Plymouth had a terrific record at home. I know it's League One. I know this is a big step up, but they've really made their home stadium a fortress. They have, and they've scored a lot of goals. I think they scored in 20 of 23 home league games last season. They beat Huddersfield 3-1 on the opening day of this season. And then they've just gone to Watford. Tough place to go. Obviously, they battered Mark's QPR and they got a nice 0-0 draw. So they'll be thinking, hang on, we're okay at championship level. This suits us. This is fine. And obviously, these two sides were 2 divisions apart last season. There should be a golfing quality. But the difference between Sheffield Wednesday, who Southampton beat, and Plymouth is that Plymouth are by and large the same team as they were last year. There's continuity. There is definitely more of a feel-good factor, more of a family vibe. And it's a little bit like at Arsenal at the moment where the fans and the team and the manager are all as one. They are loving it. And that can be powerful. It really can. And when a Premier League team or a former Premier League team comes to your place in situations like this early on in the season, you're up for it. And I think the place will be buzzing. And I don't think it'll be easy for Southampton, who have looked vulnerable. They looked shaky from set pieces against Sheffield Wednesday. And they obviously let in 4 against Norwich at the weekend. They're pretty lucky, actually, to get a point. There's a fortuitous penalty decision that got them the draw in the end when maybe they didn't deserve that. But they will score lots of goals. I think they had 31 shots against Norwich. They had about 1,000 passes, didn't they, against Sheffield Wednesday? They are going to have a lot of the ball, Southampton. They'll create plenty. But I also think that Plymouth, with Barley Mumba coming down the sides, Ryan Hardy up top, a guy called Morgan Whittaker, who they brought in on loan initially, is now signed permanently. These are guys that I think can actually do a little bit of damage, especially against a defence that might not be tip-top yet. And Southampton, under Russell Martin, they will gift you chances. I know that, because Russell Martin plays a very risky brand of football. So, yeah, when all things considered, I thought, this price looks good. If we can get the 2-1, the 3-1, the 3-2, or even, you know, something crazy above it, that's not beyond the realms of possibility. So, yeah, I'm willing to take the punt on it.
Okay, sportsbooks have Plymouth to win 3.8, matchbook 4.1. Sportsbooks have it 7.0 with both teams to score yes. At boost again 7.2. Plymouth and both teams to score yes versus Southampton. Incidentally, Russell Martin, I thought he was very good defending our own Gavin Bazunu after a couple of games in what was a Frank Lampard, Harry Redknapp sort of press conference. Do check it out if you haven't seen the clip on Twitter. It's well worth a watch. But good, strong case made by Adrian Clarke at 7.2 there. Mark, you hit the crossbar a bit with Bournemouth. If they snuck a winner there at the end, they would have gotten the win and both teams to score versus West Ham last week. You're going to league on this week for your long shot.
Yeah, I was looking at ways to keep Montpellier on side as they go away to Lyon. The +1 start certainly appealed. I also would have been keen on goals, but the line is already quite low there. So, yeah, Montpellier were 4.5 to win this match, but the price moves to 7.8 now. It was 7.5. It's 7.8 now for Montpellier to win and both teams to score. If they are going to win this game, I can't see them not keeping a clean sheet because they are gung-ho. They failed to take their chances last week at home to newly promoted Le Havre. They drew that game 2-2. They were the better team. They won the shot count 11-6. It wasn't to be, but their debutant striker, Akot Adams, was very impressive, scored twice after his money move from Norwegian football, where he was really tearing it up. So they've got plenty in their armoury, and I think this is a good opportunity for them to sort of show what they're capable of doing, because Lyon, were woefully underwhelming last year. They finished 11 points off the top three. They've had a really difficult summer with the owner coming into question about his funding for the club, which has kind of really hamstrung their work in the transfer market. And Laurent Blanc hasn't really pulled up any trees in the head coach's role there since taking the gig either. So those off-field issues seem to have an effect on their opener. They were really wretched against Strasbourg. They lost the game 2-1. They only really showed up when 2-0 down in the final 15 minutes of that match. And defensively, they were a bit of a shambles at times. So quite happy to oppose them here. As I say, Montpellier, very front foot, expecting entertainment. The two games between these two teams last season produced 12 goals. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see both sides contribute. And then obviously getting Montpellier on side to win the game at a really nice price. Lyon are dreadfully short for a team of, haven't proven to be that, haven't proven to be worthy odds-on favourites and quite strong odds-on favourites in this kind of field for quite some time. So happy to oppose them.
Okay, Montpellier, both teams to score yes, and an improved price now of 7.8 versus Lyon, who have incidentally signed an Irish centre-back from Crystal Palace, Jake O'Brien there. So there's all my Irish football updates for the week. Gone and done. Mark, I'm very interested in your best bet selection here. I don't think I've seen this before from you, or very rarely last season. The best bets record's going on the Sling. We've started the season 2-0, so we're determined to keep that going. And you can see how you would return there based on a £20 stake on the best bets. But yeah, Mark, over to you for this one. I think it's best you take this away.
Yeah, sure. Something a little bit different for week two. Taking a Scandinavian double on Sunday around the even money mark. It's 2.02 for Viking to beat Stabæk in Norway and also Häcken to beat Sirius in Sweden. Both of these two teams have phenomenal home records. They're playing bottom half opposition and they're in very strong form as well. So Viking have actually gone level on points at the top of the Eliteserien after an impressive 9-game winning streak, which also includes beating Bodo Glimt, who are top of the table. At home, they've gone 7 wins from 9. They scored twice or more in 8 of those 9. They scored 3 goals or more in 6 of those 9. They're averaging 2 non-penalty expected goals per game at home as well. So very strong. Stabæk, 6 defeats from 8 on the road. They've taken just 2 points from their last 9 matches since May. They failed to score in 5 of 6. They've also lost 6 of 7 against the top 6 this season. Then you've got Häcken, who are 1 point off the top in a 3-way title race in Sweden. Their home form has just been incredible, really. 9 wins from 10. In 9 wins coming into this clash, they've scored twice or more in 8 of those 9. At home, they scored twice or more in 9 of 10. They've also scored 3 goals or more in 8 of those 10 games as well. And they're averaging 2.1 non-penalty expected goals at home. Sirius have lost 5 of the last 7. They've lost 7 of 9 and failed to win against the top 7 team already this season as well. So, I think I've got 2 very strong home teams. You can combine the 2 teams on Sunday and get better than evens, 2.02.
Okay, combine them better than evens on Match for Bet Exchange. That is a very exciting best bet to cheer on this weekend. Adrian, over to you, the final call. People aren't interested in my opinion, but for what it's worth, I've only recently put Matt Turner in for game week 2. I'm really expecting a Forest clean sheet at home versus Sheffield United, and you just expect a victory here.
Interesting. Yeah. Hopefully we can get a nice early win on our best bet. Fingers crossed. Forest were a little bit better than I expected, I have to say, at Emirates Stadium. Even though Arsenal dominated the game, they actually defended pretty well. And they were without Felipe, who is their best defender. And I believe that he might be fit and available for this match. They'll also probably bring in Awani again. He came off the bench and scored and looked bright. And I'll be very surprised if Anthony Elanga doesn't start as well after his outstanding cameo. What a run that was to supply the goal for Awani. So I think under the lights at the City ground, good atmosphere. This is already a 6-pointer. It is. These are 2 teams that are absolutely in a relegation battle. This is huge. And I think that the City ground will be buzzing. And as we saw last season, that's a powerful weapon for them. 8 of their 19 home games ended in victory, which is pretty respectable. I think they were very much mid-table or even above halfway for home records last year at Nottingham Forest. And I just sense that with Elanga and Wani and Gibbs White, it was a bit quiet at Emirates at home. Johnson with his pace up against a pretty slow rearguard, I've got to say, of Sheffield United. Then pace isn't what they're about, really. I think that Forest can make hay here. And look, Sheffield United, I just think it's going to be tough for them. They've got Gus Harmer, who's coming from Coventry. Great signing. He will improve them for sure. But that starting 11, that was not a Premier League starting 11, I'm afraid, at the weekend. The bench, shocking, really. And they were lucky, I think, to just lose by 1. Palace aren't the most creative side in the world, are they? 24 shots, 8 of those on target. I think it's going to be tough for them until they get more bodies in, and right now they don't. So I think Nottingham Forest are worthy favourites, and maybe given Sheffield United's issues, I expected Forest to be slightly shorter. But 1.94 backable for me. Yeah, backable for me too. Friday Night Football, Nottingham Forest versus Sheffield United. A home win in that one for Adrian Clarke, 1.94. We are done for week 2. My thanks to Mark O'Hare and Adrian Clarke. Really appreciate all the kind comments, not just on social media last week, but also on our YouTube channel. Do keep them coming. Do leave a comment for the guys. Any questions you might want for next week or just any feedback for the show, it's all more than welcome. We'll be back same time, same place next week. Best of luck with your bets. Please gamble responsibly. Take care.